I've been saying for a number of months now that the economy is full of mixed messages, and I'm really seeing it in the mid to senior executive ranks because there's no doubt that I'm getting more and more phone calls about corporate restructures and unfortunately redundancies that are taking place, even with the most high profile, high performing business executives. And I think it's a real warning for executives in the market because we're often seeing this happening in companies which are generally speaking performing extremely well. Extremely profitable enterprises are still releasing really good quality candidates into the market as they're pursuing further efficiencies. Maybe they're reading the tea leaves, seeing where things are headed in the economy overall, making adjustments early. And really, there's a lot of recalibration going on in businesses. And, it can be quite a shock for a senior executive who is fundamentally doing extremely well, performing extremely well, delivering results, and still you can be on the receiving end of a corporate restructure or a redundancy package. When this happens to you, it's really important that you just take your time. It can be quite a shock initially when you deliver the news by human resources. And human resources departments are designed to protect the company's best interests. And typically what will happen shortly after this, news has been delivered about a redundancy or a corporate restructure, you may be presented with a few options, but very quickly the organisation is going to try and move you towards some form of a formal release towards the company in terms of their obligations. And it's a deed of release. It's a legal, contractually binding document that you will sign, typically when you're a senior business executive. And I rarely see executives just released and see you later. There is a sort of a period of time from when the notification is given to you to the exit where there's a little bit of contract negotiation that goes on. Now, it's pretty important at that time to make sure you seek independent advice, and it might mean that you do need to speak to an employment lawyer, really gather your thoughts, ensure that your legal, contractual entitlements are being obviously honoured and fulfilled. But often in this period where you're a senior business executive, you might find that there are additional considerations. For example, your length of notice, gardening leave provisions, non-compete provisions, how references would be treated into the future, what the message might look like to the market, and so on. And surprisingly, candidates do often have quite a bit of say during this period of time, but you do need to know your legal rights. You do need to know where the company is making some concessions or some additional offers or additional benefits above and beyond what you would normally be entitled to under a fair work scenario. Keep in mind for senior executives, fair work really just takes you to the very lowest common denominator in terms of provisions. And so as a senior executive, when you are typically being released from companies, you're often entitled to, 6-month notice periods, up to 12-month notice periods. So there's a lot more that happens in a senior executive contract that you have to be aware of, and a few more moving parts. And it's, it's the reality is at a senior executive level, it takes longer to secure new employment, especially at that level of remuneration, which can often be very, very substantial. And, it's a game of musical chairs. Sometimes there just aren't those level of senior roles available in the market. So it's very important during a redundancy, contractual negotiation that you take everything you can possibly off the table to ensure you're given as big a buffer as possible. Once you can achieve, a sort of an agreement between the parties, and obviously at this level we really do try and avoid formal legal activity because really it doesn't really serve much purpose other than it can often prolong and create quite a lot of stress and anxiety. Often what's best is really to just have that clean break and be able to move forward in the market and secure new employment. Now, the key here is, even if you have been afforded a really substantial payout, so to speak, it's really important that you try and re-engage in the market really quickly. And, these days at a senior executive level, best case scenario is you're going to pick something up within 3 to 6 months. Worst case scenario might be 6 to 12 months. But if you do very minimal activity in the early days, you might find it takes over a year, and you may miss your window to re-enter the corporate market. So it's really important that you get re-engaged. And one of the things I highly recommend, especially to senior executive clients, is that you look at activating your board portfolio, because it really changes the message to market. You could be in a holding pattern for a little bit longer, and if you've got board work, you can be really busy contributing to a business, whether it be as an advisory board member or as a non-executive director, and that can be a really rewarding and positive experience. And that could include working potentially with not-for-profits, with for-profit organisations, small startups, upstarts, doing some mentoring, anything that you can do really to keep yourself engaged and busy while you're still looking for that main employment contract. But I've certainly seen a surge in this activity. I've had several examples of this just in the past month. So it's definitely a recurring theme in the corporate markets at the moment. So it's always important to have that parachute packed. And then if you are unfortunately in the scenario of being restructured, released from an organisation, just make sure you take your time in that sensitive period of contract negotiations. Get the contract right, get the deed of release right, speak to the right lawyers. Always feel that you can have a chat with me. I always take confidential calls about these matters and just provide you with the right guidance so that you land on the right outcome for all the parties concerned.